going to introduce our guest speaker. And he'll tell you a little bit about our guest speakers, and we'll move forward from there. Deputy Kent.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, guys. Chris actually gave me this to read, so. Today we have Chris Sandy and Eric Krug with us. They're going to share their stories with you and be reliving a horrific night in both of their lives. These are two very different stories about drinking and driving in two very different prisons. They do not want anyone to experience what they must endure every day of their lives. One night of fun turned into crippling injuries, deaths, and a life full of regret. After the presentation, if time permits, there will be a segment for questions and answers. Please welcome Chris and Eric.
Thank you, Sergeant Kent, for that. And I want to thank each and every one of you for giving us this opportunity to share our stories with you. My name is Chris Sandy, and sitting right over here is Eric Krug, and we do have two stories to share with you today. They are different, but yet the same. Our stories are even a little bit connected, but as I said, they are different. You know, we didn't come here today to tell you what to do with your life. We're not here to tell you how to run it. We're not here to tell you don't do this and don't do that, because we know ultimately it's up to you to make decisions in your life. It's up to you to make the choices. But we are here to encourage you to make the right choices, only because of what we've been through in our life. We don't want to see you make some bad choice in your life where you wake up one day regretting everything you've done. And maybe you'll understand more about that after we're done sharing our stories. And so we just would appreciate you just opening up your hearts and just listening to what we have to say today and giving us this chance. And I promise you, we will leave you with something that is definitely important, something that you can use in your life. Sergeant Kent took me to this school several years ago. I was underneath some pretty bad situations. And it was because of some choices I had made. To give you a little bit of an idea, right here was a picture taken of me in 2004. This picture was taken of me in 2004 because it was something I had volunteered for while I was serving time inside prison. So, I was inside a cell just like this for 3,117 days. It's almost 8.5 years. So I don't have to sit here and elaborate and tell you about how bad it was being in prison for 8.5 years, nor do I have to sit here and tell you about how bad of a thing I must have done. I think that's pretty given. But I will share with you this. The choice I made, it did indeed cost the lives of two wonderful people. They're dead because of what I did. And that is a choice that I will have to live with for the rest of my life. And that is the choice that many other people will have to live with for the rest of their lives. And at one point in time, I was sitting right where you are, thinking that nothing would ever happen. Thinking that everything was just fine. Sometimes it's not always okay. Sometimes it's easy to get caught up doing the wrong thing. Sometimes it just takes that 1 second to make that one wrong choice. Just like it did with me. So I made this choice when I was 22. It was on April 11th of 2000. That night it all started out at a small party. So at this small party I was at, my friends and I were sitting down at this table and we were having some drinks. We had these red Solo cups. Some of them had some beer in it. Some of them had some mixed drinks in it, whatever. But my friends and I were pumping each other up to drink them. We lived right outside of Atlanta. We were a little bit out in the country. And so as we're sitting out at this small party, here we go and we start drinking. So I have these 4 Solo cups back to back to back to back. And after the 4th one, all of a sudden I get a phone call from some of my friends. Guess what? They're at another party. So as soon as I hear about this other party, I'm excited. I'm ready to go. My friend Jesse and I, we decide we're going to head over there. We walk out to my car. I get into the driver's seat. My friend Jesse gets into the passenger seat, and we drive off. Except we never make it to the other party. Now, I was driving down this back road. Like I said, it was out in the country. Knew this road very, very well. It would be like driving to school, similar to that. I mean, a road that you know so incredibly well. I cannot even remotely tell all of you how many different times I'd driven down this road, other than the party was at my friend's house. I went to my friend's house all the time. So this road, it went from 45 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. You hit a stop sign, made a right-hand turn, and at the end of the road, that's where my friends lived at. Now, something that I certainly recall about this road is because it was in the country, a lot of times during the night or whatever, or in the evening times, if I was on that road, sometimes we drive pretty fast. So that night, as soon as I got on the road, I was excited about getting to this party, so I take off and I'm flying down the road. I have my radio up. Jesse and I were cutting up and laughing, and I start flying down the road going about 80 miles an hour. So as I'm flying down this road, all of a sudden, I drive up behind this white minivan. So as soon as I see this white minivan in front of me, we're just on a 2-lane road. As soon as I see them in front of me, I look over at my friend Jesse, I look back at the road, and I decide, man, I'm just going to blow past him. So Jesse and I are nodding our heads, we're laughing, and I start passing the minivan. So as I'm passing them, right down the road in front of me, I see this oncoming car. You know, it's a car in the other lane coming in my direction. They have their left-hand turn signal on. I can clearly tell they're ready to turn across the road to pull into a driveway. I can see it as clear as day. And as soon as I see it, I immediately start to get back over to my lane. And I start to get back over to my lane, and as I'm getting back over to my lane, all of a sudden I see this gold flash shoot in front of my face, then bang! I hear this incredibly loud and solid sound, and everything went black. Now, after several seconds had passed, I could not see anything yet, but I started to hear my tires slowly roll off the edge of the road. And as soon as they came to a stop, that's when I opened my eyes and I found myself pinned on the passenger side dashboard up against the front window, and I could barely breathe. I have no idea how in the world I got out of my car. Maybe I crawled out the window, crawled out a door. I simply cannot remember. However, what I do remember is there was a time where I found myself crawling in the middle of the road. And as I was crawling in the middle of the road, there was a moment where I had to stop. I was in an incredible amount of pain. I had to stop because my right leg, it had been dislocated from my hip and wrapped around on my back. And where my knee slammed into the dashboard and ripped out, it was bleeding severely, and then I started to fall in and out of consciousness. Well, the next time I regained my consciousness, the next time that I could remember anything, there was an officer standing over me. So you could already imagine if this officer standing over me, their job is to find out what happened. So of course, he started to ask me questions. He looked over at me and he said, "Son, can you tell me how fast you were going?" Well, I was in an enormous amount of pain. I already knew I was going way too fast for this road. I was scared I was going to get into a lot of trouble. So I didn't want to tell him the truth. I looked at him and I told him, "No, sir." Then he looked at me and he told me about how serious this was. He let me know they were sending a life flight helicopter to come and get me. And then he offered to call someone to let them know what happened. So I gave my mom's name and number. Then that officer knelt down and leaned right over me. And when he did this, he looked at me and he took a deep breath. And he said, have you been drinking? Now, of course I'd been drinking. I had those 4 big drinks back to back to back as soon as I left out of that party. But I wasn't about to tell him that I did that. Because once again, I was scared I was going to get into more trouble. I didn't want to go to jail. So I looked at him and I said, "No, sir." And as soon as I said those words, I heard someone in the background yell something. And those words I heard yelled, I will promise every single one of you, I will never, ever forget those words for the rest of my life. Because while I was worried there for a second about going to jail for a DUI or worried about what happened to my car, all of a sudden in the background, I hear someone in the background yell, "There's a fatality on the scene. There's a fatality on the scene." And as soon as I hear those words, I realize right then and there that I just killed someone. But I could not believe that something like this is happening, so I actually laid there and I prayed to God, hoping that maybe when I closed my eyes and opened them up, that somehow all this would go away. I already know every single person in here has had something bad happen in their life. And you know what that feels like. When something bad happens, you want to go lay down and you're hoping the next day somehow it just goes away. You know what? The next day when I woke up, I was hoping it would go away. But there was no way it was going to go away. Because as soon as I opened my eyes, I looked around. I noticed I was laying in a hospital bed in a hospital room. I knew what I had done. And before I had much time to think any more about it, my friend was in there and she was explaining to me everything. When I was released from the hospital, I had a chance to read a newspaper article. It explained to me that when I was driving down that back road, I was passing the white minivan. It said that when I passed the white minivan, I was going approximately 77 miles an hour. It said that as I tried to get back over to my lane, the oncoming car, the one with the left-hand turn signal on, the one that I saw that was wanting to turn into the driveway, they made the left-hand turn and pulled into the driveway. But as they made that turn in the driveway, of course, I was going way too fast. I had been drinking. There was no way I could stop. And I plowed right into the rear passenger door, completely driving through their car, cutting it in half, leaving the front half of the car around the driveway, and the back half was ripped off that vehicle and drug another 100 feet down the road with my car. The car I hit, it was a 1984 Ford LTD. Right here is the front half of their car. And then the next picture is the rear half. And that was the part that was lodged onto the front end of my car. I was driving a Ford Probe. And then right here, this shows right in the passenger seat. Now, I know there's a specific area here you cannot see. It's a little dark. But right in this area, it's a black purse. Might not mean anything to you, but of course it does to me because I know exactly who that black purse belonged to. It belonged to the person that was sitting in the passenger seat. Her name was Mrs. Nellie King. She died on impact. They were pulling into a relative's driveway. Her body was thrown into a nearby ditch. Her relatives were there to go get her. She died instantly. Her husband, Mr. William King, we were life flighted to Atlanta Medical Center. After his first surgery, Mr. King, he died too. I did not know who the King family was. I do now. They were wonderful people. They were in the early 70s. They had an awesome family. They had an amazing granddaughter named Tara. Every day that I wake up for the rest of my life, I know that I killed her grandparents. All because I wanted to go to another party. Because I didn't want to ride with somebody else. Because I didn't want to leave my car and be inconvenienced in the morning because I thought that I was just fine to drive. And now, this is what I've done for the rest of my life. There's some things that you can do in your life that you can never take back. And of course, because of my choice, rightfully so, I was sent to prison. You know what? After being out on bond, I'd been arrested for 2 counts of vehicular homicide by DUI because my blood alcohol level was 0.14. Just to give you an idea, that night after those 4 big drinks, honestly, at 22 years old, after 4 red Solo cups, I kind of felt like my night had just started, like we were ready to get to that other party. But at 0.14, I mean, that's almost double the legal limit. And my friends and I felt like we were just getting started. So, to kind of think about that, and to think about how selfish I was to get in my car and drive to that party, that's something that's never going to go away. Now, a year later, I watched my whole family get torn apart. God knows what the victim's family must have gone through that year. I cannot even imagine. I wasn't there to witness it. I could not imagine what they went through. My own family, my mom and dad, they were married for 30 years. After I made this choice, they were divorced. They felt like they failed in life. You know what? They didn't envision me going to prison. They envisioned me doing something great with my life. So they were extremely disappointed. Then they felt like they failed as parents. You know what? They did not fail. I'm the one that failed. You know what I learned out of this, though? When you make choices in your life, no matter who you are, when you make those choices, you affect other people. You do something great with your life, you make a lot of people proud. You win a state championship? Yeah, you make everyone happy. You mess up, though? You make everyone sad. I'm telling you, you hurt people when you make the wrong choice. And I hurt my family in a way that I wish I could take back. But I can't. I made the choice. There's no changing what I did. I do have a younger sister. Her name is Angela. She's 5 years younger than me. I was her big brother. She looked up to me. I played football when I was in school. I remember her idolizing me. She thought I was the world. She thought I was so cool. After I made this choice, my sister has never looked at me the same. After her visiting me in prison, she only would come and see me. She saw me 5 times in 8.5 years. She hated coming to the prison. She hated that my parents divorced because of what happened. She hated everything. I made the choice. On April 10th, 2001, I went in front of Judge Ott. He then sentenced me to serve 13 years in prison, to have 17 years of additional probation. The sentence was 30 years. The first prison I went to was Jackson. In the state of Georgia, now anyone that goes to prison goes through Jackson. You might go for 2 weeks, you might go for 2 months, it just depends. But here's the deal, when I went through, we went through for a lot longer. So Jackson is a maximum security prison. It's where they house all the death row inmates in Georgia. There's a little over 2,000 people in there, and it's a really messed up place. So I remember all the thoughts I had about prison. I was pretty scared, didn't know what to expect. Can't even express to you all the thoughts I had. But I don't have enough time to stand up here and tell you about every story in prison. That's not possible. But I can share, maybe a day. So here it is, the first day that I was being sent to Jackson. I remember I left out of the county jail. There I am, shackled up on the bus. We head towards Jackson. We pull up to Jackson. There's so much razor wire on the fence, you can barely see through it. The guard doors pull open. Our bus pulls through. They shut. We unload off the bus. And then all of a sudden, the correctional officers come outside. They start screaming and shouting at us. They get in our face. They then push us into the room. It's called the intake room. It's where you have to be processed before you can go to the back, before you're put into general population. And as soon as you walk into this intake room, it's a little bit bigger than the stage right here, but there's 4 yellow lines. As soon as you walk in, you have to step on the yellow lines. You strip butt naked. You go into a shower. They spray you with this stuff that delices you because of the nasty stuff you pick up from other people or other stuff when you're inside the jails. Then after that, you get back on the yellow lines, you get dressed in a white jumpsuit, a pair of boots. They set you down in these chairs, they shave your hair off your head, then they send you out for some more testing. And then finally, at the end of the day, you're assigned to go to a cell block or an open dorm. So the whole purpose of Jackson, it's a diagnostic center. They have to find out if your mental health, if you have other type of health issues, maybe you have heart conditions, whatever it might be, and then they have to determine if you're a violent or a nonviolent offender. So you're going through an assortment of tests while you're there. So as soon as I go through, I find out immediately that I'm considered a violent offender, because if you have alcohol or drugs in your system and you cause a crash that someone gets hurt or killed, you are a violent offender. You're a level 5. Whether you go to prison for 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, it doesn't matter. So I was sent to F House. So this is a picture from one of the cells back in F House. Of course, this looks huge because it's on this big screen. They're actually very small. So I was sent all the way to cell 225 up on the top range. So I remember walking all the way up there to the top range. I stand there in front of the cell 225, an officer down below, he hits a button, the cell door comes open, I step inside, he starts screaming and shouting at me to shut the door, so of course I shut the door. And at that time, for whatever reason, I felt like that place was so loud. I felt like I was going to go crazy. Maybe it was because it was all concrete and steel. Maybe it was because there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in there. Maybe it was because, I was scared to death of where I was at. It was all kinds of stuff was going through my head, and so I'm inside here. And of course, in this little tiny cell, it being F House, and because of my security level, you had to be locked in the cells for 23 hours a day. So you only had about an hour that you ever left out of the cell. So for 23 hours a day, you're stuck in this cell. And so I'm assigned to the top bunk. There's this older guy that's on the bottom bunk. I go over and I talk to him a little bit. After that, I jump up on the top bunk, I lie down. And shortly after that, because it was at the end of the day, as they do every single day, they turn the lights down. And then to me, that whole cell block, it fell dead silent. And for the first time, I could finally think again. You know what? I don't have a big enough vocabulary to tell you all of the things that I was thinking about that night. I can tell you this much: I did not want to live. I wanted to be dead because I hated myself. I hated what I did. And of course, I hated being in there. And for another 8.5 years, 3,117 days, rightfully so, I remained in prison. I met a lot of people in prison who were in there for the same thing. You know what? Over 85% of the people that are in prison are in there because of alcohol or drugs. They either committed the crime while they were either using, or it was due because of selling or something related to alcohol or drugs. Georgia is the 5th largest prison system in the nation. There's over 60,000 people inside. And we also have more people on parole and probation than anywhere in the United States. Those are pretty big numbers, but it all revolves because of alcohol and drugs. So that is something that I learned while I was in there. When I was released out of prison, I was finally granted parole. And I was granted parole on August 5th, 2009. So now I've been out for a little over 5 years. So I was out for 5 years. Now that I've been out, I completed 5 years successfully on parole. Might not seem like a big thing to you, but to me, it's been a huge thing. I completed those 5 years. Now I've started my 17 years of probation. I still have a probation officer. I pay a fine every single month. If I miss my fine, if I do not talk to my probation officer, if I do not follow the rules, then they are going to ultimately send me back to jail. That's just the way it works. I already know how the system is. I follow the rules. I did not drive until about 6 months ago. The judge just recently granted my license back. It was a huge thing. I thought I was never going to get to drive again. So I went from the age of 22 until the age of 37 before I ever drove again. So pretty big deal. I'm not thinking in my mind that I even feel like I deserve to ever drive again, but yet I understood the significance and importance of driving. The responsibility is huge, and the importance of it is economical. It's huge. So I just want you to think about some of the things that you have in your life, and think about those responsibilities, and think about those choices that you have. Because I don't want you to wake up one day thinking, why did I do this? Or regretting something that you did. I had this one student a while back ago ask me this question. And some of you may get a chuckle out of it. You might think it's kind of funny. But this guy was raising his hand. A lot of times we do questions and stuff. Today we have Eric with us, so we're going to move on to his in just a second. So we're not going to do questions. But this guy raised his hand up, and he thought it would be real funny. I'm okay with anybody ever asking any question they want to. Afterwards, you have a question you want to ask me, you can ask it. I'll answer anything because I think that that's the only way you can find out information. I'm okay with it. But this guy said, hey man, why don't you tell me what was your worst experience when you were in prison? And he said, you know what? He thought it was real funny because at the time, he thought I was going to come out there. You've already heard about stuff that happens in prison, right? You guys have heard that? I don't have to go there, right? Come on. So I know what he was saying. I know what he was expecting me to come back, and he thought I was going to be funny. You know, when I was in prison for 8.5 years, man, I saw some really messed up stuff. Like, I wondered if stuff happened in prison that, like, I really, like, what you hear, if that really happened. And when I was inside there, like, you know what? Stuff like that does happen. I was glad that nothing like that ever happened to me. But that doesn't mean that other bad stuff doesn't happen. Other things happen that you don't even think about. Like, so for me, my worst experience had nothing to do with a fight or something, me getting beat down or something bad like that happened. I'm not going to lie. Of course I had been in fights. It was prison. That's the way it is. But my worst experience had nothing to do with that. All right? My worst experience was something that I wasn't even anticipating, something I never even thought about before I went into prison. Just to give you a little bit of an idea where I'm going with this, when I went to prison, my mind was all about me. I was worried about me. Shortly after I'd been in prison, all 4 of my grandparents, all 4 of them died while I was in there. I realized then I wasn't going to be going out. I wasn't going to get to go out and talk to my grandma, my grandpa, and my pop-pop and talk to them. I wasn't going to get to apologize for what I did. They died while I was inside. That was it. I was the disappointment. No one else in my family, I was. And then something happened right before I was released. It was on November 22nd, 2007. It was Thanksgiving. My whole family came to see me. It's really important to get a visit in prison. My mom, my dad, my little sister even came. It was an important day. I remember them all coming in to see me. I had to be strip search going in, strip search coming out. It was a real strict prison I was at, this last one. It was okay, though. I got in, gave everyone a hug at the beginning. You could hug at the beginning, at the end. And then they had to sit down. And when you sat down, you got to sit across from your visitors. And there's a little table that separated you. And I remember this table separating my dad. My dad sat right across from me. It's pretty cool. My dad always was trying to be funny, like trying to make the best out of it. Visitation would get loud. There'd be a lot of people around you. So my dad immediately jumped up. He had this Ziploc bag full of change. They let you bring about $20 worth of quarters because they had vending machines. So he went over to these vending machines. He started buying these candy bars, these chips, frozen sandwiches, these Cokes, all this stuff over here. And he comes to this table and he starts stacking all this food up here. And he starts laughing. And, you know, he thinks that he's making us look like the biggest rednecks ever, which he did. And, you know, we laughed about it. And of course, I remember we passed out some food to other people as everyone else laughed. And, you know, I found out that my dad was just, man, he was cool. Like, I never looked at my dad as being cool. But when I was in prison, for whatever reason, he looked at me different. He was trying to be my friend, and he was trying to help me out. And that day, I remember getting up, I shook his hand, and I gave him a hug. And he walked out, and I felt good. I knew I was still in prison, but I felt like someday I was going to get out and make it up to him. But that never happened. You don't get to make up for things in your life when you make horrible mistakes. It's not like you get a redo. My dad walked out of the prison that day. He got in the car with my mom, and as soon as they pulled out of the parking lot of the prison, he had a massive heart attack, and he died right outside. That was my worst experience in prison. That happened in 2007. It's 2015. My crash happened in 2000. Feels like it happened the other day. So I came here to share it with you because, man, I truly care. I just want you to think about everything you have going on in this great school. Think about what you have going on in your life and do something great. Don't mess it up over some dumb party or mess it up because you take one chance in your life that you know you shouldn't take. Just be responsible. I brought someone who's my inspiration in my life. He is truly awesome. I'm going to flip through some of these pictures here. It's from the night of the crash as my friend Eric makes his way up here. This is the car I was driving that night. Part of my parole and probation is that I have to go back to the crash site every year. There's 2 white crosses out in front of the house. I place a flower memorial there. I do it every year. I'll do it for the rest of my life. And if I don't do it, they would send me back to prison. It's part of my sentence. But right here, as I said, is my inspiration. It's Eric. If you would come over to this seat back over here on the side. And Eric has taught me a lot. I actually met him when I was inside prison, not because he was. Him and his mom came to visit me. It was pretty amazing. I was scared to death to meet him. But he's changed my life forever. Because sometimes we always think life is so bad, and then you always find someone who has it way worse or is struggling a lot more, but yet has a better outlook than you do. And I guess that's what I found in Eric. This is a picture of Eric when he played baseball in high school. He played baseball and he played football. Now, Eric was definitely a star athlete. He was very good. His dream, though, was to play college baseball, so eventually that dream came true. He went on to play college baseball. By his junior year of college, he was voted the most valuable defensive player of the year. He made all conference, and he felt very good about where he was going. Isn't that right, Eric? So maybe not the majors, but possibly the minors, correct? There were some huge and high hopes of where his potential could lead to. Can I help you with this? All right. So he had a lot of dreams. So I think just if you notice from him walking from his wheelchair to sitting here in this chair, you can clearly tell that some things have happened. Life is much different than from this picture up here, from where he was the all-star athlete, where he had all kinds of stuff going on, and things have changed a lot, hasn't it, Eric? Well, sure. Eric can't talk anymore. I guess that's why I have this microphone here and I'm continuing to talk. I'm sure if Eric had the chance, he could kick me off the stage and grab the microphone himself and talk, wouldn't you? I know. Shh. I'm going to help a little bit and we'll get on over. I know. He has a couple ways that he can communicate, though. So one way, and this is the first way I learned to communicate with him, was through this board right here. This board right here has some letters, numbers, and words, and so he would point and spell to this. So when I met him in 2006, him and his mom came to visit me, and then he came to visit me for many years after. He would spell like this. This is how we talked. And it does work. It can get very confusing. It's not always the best way, is it? But it was a form of communication. Then I discovered through his mom that he knew sign language, which I thought was really cool. So at the time I was in prison, I was thinking, wow, I can figure this out. I'll have all the time in the world to learn something new, so I'll try to learn sign language. And then she informed me that it was his sign language, like he made it up. So nobody really knew it other than Eric. So I started to understand that a lot better. And now I understand it even more because now I understand the sign language that he knows. So every time he gets mad at me, So you know what he does, right? Okay. So not that he does that often. Anyways, that doesn't work all the time or is appropriate for school. So what works here is about 5 years ago, right after I got out of prison, they had the iPad come out. So of course, for like me or someone, or for maybe even you, an iPad or a tablet is pretty cool for a gaming device, or, surf on the web or check out some emails, whatever it might be, read a book. For Eric, they had an app called Speak It that helped him talk. And that was really big. See, because Eric had not been talking since 1997. So for him to have any kind of voice would be super cool. So this iPad right here has changed his life. And so I'll tell you kind of how this gets to show his personality, right? Do you mind if I share a quick story? So something that I've learned over the last 5 years that I've been out, I've known him for 9 years, is that when there's guys hanging out with him, if we're kind of hanging out, he types at his own speed, right? You just type like this, and it's cool. We're okay. We're in no hurry. But if there's a girl or girls hanging around, oh, man, wait a second. This guy starts typing like this. You know what I mean? Like, wait. Changes a whole different gear. So we were doing a teen maze a few years back, and this lady wanted to volunteer, and it was, this girl, and that made, Eric really happy, right? He was super happy. So this girl said she would help Eric while I would get set up. So she went to go help him sit down, and when she did, she was holding on to his arm so tight. She was like scared to death he was going to fall over and break or something. As soon as he sat down, he started typing really fast, and I was like, oh man, I don't know if it's because it's a girl or if he's mad. And so when I went and looked over, all of a sudden, I started smiling because he hit Speak It, and he said, watch out, I have huge biceps. So it's like, once again, I started to see how the iPad was starting to use, and help him express his personality, which went a long ways. So here's the deal. Eric and I met because Eric is a victim of a DUI crash. And him and his mom wanted to come and confront me in prison. It was a pretty scary deal. Even though I had nothing to do with his crash, I was one who caused a crash like it. And we didn't know it was going to work out this way, but we became friends. And then Eric and his mom came to visit me every weekend for the entire time I was in prison. And so now I do help Eric share his story, just like I share mine. So I'm going to let Eric go ahead and share a little bit through his iPad, and once he gets started, I'm going to help him with the rest of it. You ready, bud? I'll make sure it's set up. Okay.
I wish I could talk without this iPad, but I cannot. I also need help from my friends and family to communicate some of my thoughts. Simple things like talking and working are a struggle every day of my life. I have lifelong injuries because I got in a car with a drunk driver. The driver was my roommate's girlfriend. Now, my roommate is dead, and my life is messed up. Suffering from a traumatic brain injury has ruined all of my dreams, like playing professional baseball or completing my college degree. Now, this is my never-ending nightmare which began on my 21st birthday. I wish life was different, but it is not. Heck, can you believe it? I have not gone on a real date in 17 years, so if you can hook me up with a girl my age, please holler at me after the presentation.
So you had to squeeze that in there real quick, didn't you? Okay. I don't blame you. So maybe we should tell him why you tried to squeeze that in. It's really been that long, hasn't it? The last time that you were on a real date was during your birthday, wasn't it? And can I help you with it real quick? Okay. Here you go. So, the last time that he was on a real date was on April 11th, 1997. Eric and I had our events take place on the same day. His was on April 11th of 97. Mine was April 11th of 2000. We both met each other on April of 2006. We can't explain it. That's just what it is. But what I found out was Eric and his friends, they had a baseball game on the 10th. And Eric played second base, and his best friend Tim, right, he played third base. And Eric and Tim, that night, they made a double play, and they had won the game. It was a huge game to win because the year before, they had lost, was it 31-0? In baseball, that's pretty humiliating, right? Okay? That's horrible. So this year that they went back, they went to their house and they beat them. And so it was a really big game. They won it. And so after the game, they decided they were all going to go out and celebrate Eric's birthday. Even though it was only April 10th, Eric's birthday is on April 11th. They knew at midnight he would be of legal drinking age. So the college that Eric went to was Oglethorpe University. It's downtown Atlanta. And because of it being downtown Atlanta, they knew that they could go right down the road and they could get some taxis to take back to campus, right? So they figured they would all go out, take some taxis back to campus, and they would be fine. So that night, they take the buses back to campus, they unload off the buses, they go take some showers at the dorms, they get dressed up, they talk to each other, they decided if anybody was going to drive to the bars and go hang out, that if they decided to drink, they had to take a taxi back, and they'd go back and get the cars the next morning. So they all go out, they celebrate Eric's birthday. About 2 o'clock in the morning, the celebration comes to an end. It's a pretty quick night. Everyone's pretty exhausted from the game. So Eric's sister actually grabs Eric and his girlfriend, walks them out, gets a taxi for them, sticks them into a taxi, and then all of Eric's friends are standing outside. Eric's sister reaches in, says, "I love you, brother. I'm going to see you right back at the dorm. Be careful." And she walks away. She has to grab some of her stuff she left inside. And as soon as she walks away, Eric's best friend, the team captain, Tim, walks over to the car, talks to Eric, and convinces him to get out of the taxi and to ride back to school with them. Now, why did he think it would be a good idea to ride back? I mean, how far did you guys really have to go to get back to campus? 3.4 miles. 3.4 miles. That's not very far to go, is it? So what could happen, right? So Eric and his girlfriend get out of the taxi. They get into the car with Tim and his girlfriend and another one of their friends. And the girl driving the car, Missy, she was just voted Athlete of the Year. She was there playing soccer. So, she said that she had been drinking, but she was okay. So they all get in the car with her. She drives back to campus, makes it back 3.4 miles, pulls onto campus. The speed limit's only 35, so she's only going about 40. And all of a sudden, right before they pull up to the dorms, she passes out and she drives the car right into some trees on campus at 40 miles an hour. Well, that still doesn't seem like it could be that bad. But yet at 40 miles an hour, believe me, it was really bad because as soon as she hit those trees, it was with enough force that Eric's best friend, Tim, the team captain, was sitting in between two people in the back seat without a seatbelt on. He went head first into the dashboard. It actually split his head open. And 10 hours later, Eric's best friend, Tim, was dead. Then Eric was sitting in the passenger seat. He had his right arm hanging out the window. He's trying to show you right now. And that right arm was caught on the trees. And then it was sandwiched between the car door and the trees, where it broke every bone in his arm, and then it severed it at the elbow. So when they reattached his arm right here and they put it back together, his arm has never worked the same again. So this is as wide or as much as he can open his hand. He can no longer reach his hand above his head. This is as far as he can go. I'm literally pulling on it as hard as I can. And he no longer can throw a baseball or a football anymore. It doesn't work that way. Well, that's a pretty minor injury in the scope of things, because during that, Eric's head went through the front window, pulled back out of the front window, then slungshot and hit the tree at 40 miles an hour. And so that caused Eric's skull to fracture in 2 spots. So Eric's mom told me about how bad these fractures were. It caused his brain to swell. When his brain swelled, his mom said it caused a lot of damage, and was led to even more problems to his injuries. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, Eric fell into a coma right after the crash. His head injury was horrible. And this is a picture of him in April. These are the same week. Here he is as a college athlete. And then here he is the night of that party, celebration of his birthday. 21st birthday, April 11th. So every time he celebrates his birthday, he's reminded of the crash. That's what he celebrates, his injury. Here's an idea. He was in 3 different hospitals. This being the second hospital. This is when he was in stable condition. He had already been in ICU at one hospital. They finally got him into a better condition to where they could transport him. He went to the Shepherd Center in Atlanta. This is where he is now, at Shepherd. And even though his eyes are there, he is actually in a coma state. He even falls into a deeper coma after this. But you can tell that he struggled with breathing. He was running about 104 temperature, his mom told me. And each day the doctors would come in. They couldn't tell them whether he was going to live or if he was going to die. So here's an idea of when he starts falling into deeper coma. He barely can breathe still. You know, the family is still trying to hold on to hopes that he's going to wake up. Every one of Eric's baseball teammates, every one of the football players that he played football with, everybody he grew up with was at that hospital. All of his coaches that ever coached him, everybody. And they kept on hoping he was going to wake up. During his physical therapy, if you saw that last session, it didn't go so well. He was eventually moved to a nursing home. Insurance wouldn't keep on paying because he was not moving in the right direction. Eventually, he was let out of that hospital, and when he was in the nursing home, his mom fought to have him put into another hospital, Scottish Rite of Atlanta. They took him in. And then Scottish Rite really worked hard with Eric. And Eric finally, slowly started to come out of his coma. Eric was in a coma state for over a year. It took Eric 3 years to ever walk again. Something I've learned from Eric and his family is they never once, ever gave up. And I know that this is not how Eric envisioned his life. I know that this is not the way he dreamt that life was going to be. But I also know how incredible he is because he lives. He lives for this moment to be here in front of you, to make you think about what you have in your life. Your choices do matter. They are important. We brought a short video here. We want to share this with you. It's just a collection of Eric's pictures as he grew up. He went to Brookwood High School in Atlanta, and then eventually it's in Gwinnett County. And then he went on to Oglethorpe.
Looking back on the memory of the dance we shared beneath the stars above. For a moment, all the world was right. How could I have known that you'd ever say goodbye? And now I'm glad I didn't know the way it all would end, the way it all would are better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. Holding you, I held everything for a moment. Wasn't I the king? But if I'd only known how the king would fall, and who's to say? You know I might have changed it all. And I'm glad I didn't know the way it all would end, the way it all would go. Our lives are better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. It's my life, it's better left to chance. I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance.
That was a big moment in the last picture, wasn't it, as you got to walk your sister down the aisle. Something he never thought he'd get to do is walk, and he did. Eric has been a huge inspiration in my life. He's helped me out, can't say it enough. He helped me about a year ago write a book, something I had thought about trying to do, didn't think I could do it, and then he really encouraged me. So, by all means, he nor I are authors or great writers or anything like that, but it was a big goal of ours, wasn't it? And we did it. And so it just proved to us that, that we could do something like this, and it was something that we wanted to use as a tool to help get our message out. Like, it meant a lot. Like, we have all kinds of different ways, like DVDs and different things on YouTube, and also a website, and this book. So it was really important to us. And it was a big accomplishment. This is the first edition. We have a new revised one that we're going to come out with. But it was a learning thing. It was a learning tool for us, and a learning tool for many others. And it would have not been done without Eric's help. Now, this right here is another part to my story. I am now a proud dad to two magnificent kids. Right over here, this is Eric's favorite picture. He's an awesome uncle. I'm going to share this. This is Zachary Daniel, the one with the big head. And then this is Madison Ray. And they are now 3 and 4 years old. This is a little bit more of a recent picture here. We like going to the lake. And one of the things out of this whole story, and Eric always wants us to end on a better note, right? And I'm not going to leave it out, okay? Is that through his kindness, he introduced me to his sister, and his sister and I became best friends, and now we're married, and we have 2 wonderful kids. So Eric is my brother-in-law also. So our stories are connected. Eric has taught me that as you're doing good things in your life, that you can get the support of a lot of great people. So I know last year Eric had hung out with Shaq a couple of different times at some schools, and he finally brought me to meet his friend. And of course I tried to get my picture over here, right? Who wouldn't? And Eric has had the opportunity to meet a lot of different people, celebrities or not. But one thing it doesn't fix is it doesn't fix Eric's injuries. Eric is injured for life. But one thing that he has not ever given up on is he's never given up on life. Even though he's injured for life, he has not given up on life. And I guess that's one of the things that has always encouraged me the most. I've had some dark times where I've been full of regret and hated what I did. But Eric has always reminded me that there is hope and there's a chance for each and every one of us always to do something great and positive with our lives. But you do that by making the right choices. And so I know that we encourage each one of you to make the right choices in life. You have a great school here, a great community, and I know you've done some awesome things. We keep up with this county really because of Sergeant Kent over here. He's followed me on Facebook, and I've likewise back and forth. We've been trying to get back down here for a while. And, just glad that we had this chance to share this with you today. We have a few books here. We're going to take the opportunity just to do 2 questions. Are you okay with this, Eric? And we'll do 2 questions real fast. Anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Because if you do, we'll just give you a quick book. Anyone have anything they'd like to ask? You can be to Eric. Maybe you want to ask about his girlfriend, or you want to ask about Jesse or anything like that. Yes, sir? Sorry? Do you have a question? What happened to Eric's girlfriend? So that, is a good question because of, and I had brought it up also because I wanted someone to ask it, is that Eric's girlfriend, her name is Marie, and she was from New Jersey, and she was down going to college with Eric, and they've been together for about 8 months. And she stayed by Eric's side for the whole time he was in the hospital. And then when Eric got out of the hospital, Marie's parents were very concerned for her because she was failing in college and she couldn't maintain trying to keep up with Eric and school. So eventually Eric's parents and Marie's parents got together with her and told her she needed to go home. So she went home, and she never was able to talk to Eric again. However, we have followed Marie a little bit now, haven't we? We went and I kind of searched her out, and now she follows what Eric does. She's not reached out, but she has started to make some comments on Facebook and a few things to her friends that you can tell that what happened that night has deeply impacted her life. And I hope maybe someday that she can reach out to Eric. I know it was a big deal for both of them. So thank you for asking that question. Afterwards, if you would, please come up. We'd love to give you this book. Eric will sign it for you. Thank you. Yes, right here. I'm sorry? How did you feel when I proposed to your sister? What's that kind of look there? Oh, man. All right, does that answer it? We can go ahead and do one more, sure. Go ahead. How was my friend, Jesse? It's a great question. Jesse, that night, when we passed that car, I remember neither one of us had our seatbelts on, and I remember him reaching up to grab the seatbelt to tell me to slow down. Jesse and I always goofed off and played around, so I kind of thought he was playing around when we grabbed the seatbelt. And I remember glancing up at him, and when I turned back is when I saw the car, and all I could do was brace on the steering wheel when we drove through. So I wasn't sure what happened to Jesse that night. I don't even remember seeing him. And later on, he told me what had happened. He said as soon as we had hit the car, that somehow he had grabbed the seatbelt right on impact, and he had actually grabbed it when I turned my head, and he had buckled it in, and he said the seatbelt had saved his life, and that he remembered seeing me pinned on the window right in front of him, and he was scared to death. He didn't know what to do. Jesse, he's now doing really well with his life. He lives out in Phoenix, Arizona. Last time I knew, he sold medical supplies. And we only keep in touch a little bit through every once in a while through text messages. But I'm glad that he's doing very well. Thank you for asking. You know, I really appreciate everything. If you guys have another question you'd like to ask us afterwards, please do so. If you want to take a picture of Eric, please do so. We certainly appreciate your time. We wish you the best. God bless. Thank you.
Guys, stay in your seat for just a minute, please. Let's take one more minute and give Chris and Eric our appreciation. As you already know, because Celebrate My Drive was such a big push for our school, driving safely, your safety, your friends' safety, and your lives are very important to me. They're very important to our school, and it's a commitment that we've made. If you're juniors and seniors in here, then you know last year our word for the year was choice. And today, you have seen how choices can affect your life forever. I want you to think about that, and I want you to commit to making the best choices you can possibly make. Will you do that for me? I didn't hear you. Okay, very good. All right. If any of you have any questions that you would like to come down and ask at the very end, you may do so. Otherwise, we're going back to class. Have a good afternoon, guys.